California communities and the people that are flying in all around the country to help bolster this effort and find and remove oil. Our priorities remain the safety of human health, the safety of our public, protection of the environment, protection of wildlife, and finding and removing oil as soon as we can detect it and as soon as we can remove it. Our teams continue to focus on removing oil from the water and from the beaches. And a significant level of effort is going into that and increasing. By the end of the week, we are targeting to have 1,500 workers on our beaches throughout Orange County. We're partnering closely with my counterpart in San Diego, as well as our state and local counterparts, first responders and public safety officials, in the event that we start to see oiling further south. But our concentration of effort right now is a robust effort on our beaches with workforce. This is a lot of manual labor. It's people in suits and gloves that are picking up oil off the beaches, what we call tar balls and patties, packaging that up so it can be disposed of as hazardous material. We have people flying in the air so they can continue to spot oil on the water, and we can move vessels in, vector them towards that oil, pick it up, and also dispose of that. Incredibly grateful for the effort that has come together here and continues to grow as we go through the week and the time ahead. Everybody here is absolutely committed to cleaning up our much-loved California beaches. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Christian Corvo. I'm a patrol lieutenant with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Office of Spill Prevention and Response. My office has the Pollution Authority delegation to protect natural resources for the state of California, which includes wildlife and habitat. At this time, I can speak on shoreline impacts and some of our SCAT teams. SCAT refers to the Shoreline Cleanup Assessment Teams. It's basically a forward-facing group of folks that go out and assess our beaches, our wildlife, and report back to the command post. With that information, we plan for the following day's operations. That you'll see on our beaches today. You'll see these cleanup crews picking up oil based on those assessments. We currently have cleanup going from Huntington Beach down to Dana Point, and assessment teams, from Newport Beach down to Dana Point, and then assessment teams from Huntington down to Newport at this time. We have upwards of 350 personnel on the beaches cleaning up, and at this point, California residents can be assured that we're utilizing as many resources as we can to protect our wildlife. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Samantha Atkinson from the County of Orange. I'm thankful to be here as the local government representative working alongside the Unified Command to make sure that we're responding to this critical event. Our OC Public Works continue to fortify and build berms to protect our local waterways. OC Watersheds are protecting our channels and our surface water, and we're working closely with our local cities to identify the targeted areas that need the most response and to guard their beaches. We appreciate your continued support and interest in this critical matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start by just sincerely thanking the Coast Guard, California Fish and Wildlife, all of the state and federal agencies that have been so integral in these recovery efforts. They're doing an amazing job working tirelessly 24 hours a day to make this situation be resolved as quickly as possible, and we're very appreciative of all they're doing. I'd like to say that we remain fully committed to being here, working with this unified command for as long as it takes and until the Coast Guard deems us complete. At this time, our Amplified team is primarily focused on assisting with collecting information for the various investigations underway, providing logistical and technical support, and analyzing any data that may be needed for the recovery efforts. I'd like to conclude by just saying that our employees live and work in these areas as well. We are deeply concerned about the impact to the residents, the local businesses, and the environment and we want to do everything we can to ensure that situation and this release gets resolved as quickly as possible so that these beautiful areas can be restored and all of the residents and businesses can get back to normal as quickly as possible. Thank you.
It's a beautiful statement, sir. There's only one thing missing. What's your name
Martin Wilshire, sir.
and your position?
I am the Amplify CEO and President.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Zaccardi. I'm the director of the Oiled Wildlife Care Network, a program based out of UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine. Here to give an update on the wildlife collected to date on this response. As of last night, we had 13 live birds and 2 dead birds that have been collected by our teams. Today we continue our large-scale operations covering beaches and water from north of Bolsa Chica all the way down to San Onofre, looking for affected animals. We provide updated numbers by 7 p.m. every night on our website, but I can report at this point our teams have collected 4 oiled live snowy plovers today in Huntington Beach area, a federally threatened species. We'll have complete information on that as well as the other animals that have been collected through this operational period together by this evening. Thank you.
Right, before we open it for questions, I understand you all have some questions and I don't want to cut anybody off, but if you could stick to the ground rule is ask one question and then let the rest of the group ask theirs before we do second questions. Okay, we'll start over here.
Mr. Wilshire?
Yes, sir.
What took your company so long to stop pumping?
From the minute we were not pumping oil at 8:09 a.m. when we actually discovered the oil in the water, so we did not take any additional time. We automatically instituted our incident recovery plan, and people were notified very, very quickly, and we were moving on.
But a plume was noticed by a satellite at 7 p.m. Friday, which means you must have had a significant loss of pressure, which means alarms should have gone off. Why did that happen?
We are conducting a full investigation to that and working with PHMSA and the other regulators to see if there is anything that shouldn't have been noticed.
I mean, is that something that is most elemental in any sort of pipeline facility? Noticing when there's a significant loss of pressure such that...
I'm not sure if there was a
thousands of gallons
significant
of
loss of pressure, but we will fully investigate this.
It was something besides a Central Park that was spotted by a satellite at just before 7 p.m. on Friday evening. I think probably everybody's asking the same questions.
So we're not aware of any spill until 8:09 a.m. on Saturday morning. I promised you, if we were aware of something on Friday night, I promised you we would have immediately stopped all operations and moved forward.
So that happened
So,
to account
wait, let's go around the line, please. All right, over here, anybody have any questions? Yes?
Maybe a question for you. Looking at the movement of this spill, tides, weather, what is affecting it and where is it taking it at this point? Compared to the American trader, we're not seeing what we did on the shore here. It seems to be pushing away. Can you explain why?
Captain, can you handle it?
There are a number of factors, as you already stated, that impact the movement of oil and the oil that is onshore and offshore. And what we saw at the beginning of this response a few days ago was oil that was moving inland towards the shore, and also oil moving in the southerly direction. Some of that oil has already showed up on shore. Some of that oil continues to move. We track that information by trajectories, but what we're seeing right now is the oil that's showing up on the shore, and putting in place those protective strategies as a precaution ahead of oil continuing to move in a southerly direction, and the oil that already has moved south from the original location of the oil spill.
And are there numbers today to explain how much has been recovered?
We have a gallon estimate over 5,000 gallons of oil recovered, and that's from on-water recovery. And then we have oil that's been picked up by our teams on the beaches in addition.
Yeah, we'd also like to reiterate too that the numbers that have gone out is a maximum potential quantity release, so we're still investigating to kind of figure out that number, but right now that is the maximum potential number of oil released. All right, any other questions over here?
Can I just follow up with what you just asked?
Yeah, just briefly, yeah. Mr. Wilshire can address that. I think there's some science behind that. You want to talk about that?
So we are working with the investigative groups to analyze this number. We actually anticipate that number, given this is a 13-inch crack, that this number will be revised lower. But those numbers have to be fully vetted and will be released at the appropriate time.
Right over here in the middle. Yes.
My question's for Mr. Zaccardi from UC Davis.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can you please talk to us about what these animals, what the wildlife has to go through when they're covered in oil, and what the rehabilitation process is like for them?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, first and foremost, getting out on the beaches as quickly as possible to collect animals quickly, absolutely crucial, which is why we have 1,600 people trained to do that in the state of California if needed. Taking back to a stabilization facility to provide initial first aid. We're fortunate enough right here to have Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center that is doing that for us here. And they go to what's called primary care, so full cleaning, medical evaluation, and conditioning. That's at the Los Angeles Oil Bird Care and Education Center, managed by International Bird Rescue for us. They'll be there for a period of weeks until they're completely normal and then returned back to a clean environment.
What about the mammals? I'm sure in a couple weeks, months, we're going to start to see sea lions wash up and dolphins and whales. What's that rehabilitation process like for them?
So with marine mammals, it's very similar. Again, we're fortunate in California to have a robust marine mammal stranding network. We currently have 2 facilities on standby in case marine mammals are found: Pacific Marine Mammal Center in Laguna Beach and SeaWorld San Diego. If animals are collected, the same process would occur. They would go there, be stabilized, moved on to primary care, cared for, returned back to normal, and then returned back to the environment.
So it's possible for them to survive through it?
Absolutely. The survival rates with wildlife affected by oil have been going up in the past 20 years since the department and OWCN has been involved. So very likely, very high likelihood of success.
Any other wildlife questions while Dr. Zaccardi's here? Yes.
We've heard estimates on how many birds were affected. Are there any estimates yet on how many fish were affected by the oil that's coming in or that have been collected?
That doesn't go to my area of expertise. I do know experts are looking at that to determine through either direct observations or modeling through the natural resource damage assessment to determine what those impacts might be.
Any more wildlife? Yeah, wildlife?
Yes, so as far as the marine mammals go, are you expecting them to be signs of impact to show up much later? In other words, like weeks, could be several weeks, might it not be for a few months? And what are the impacts to the marine mammals as they swim through the oil and ingest fish, etc., that may be covered with oil?
So for marine mammals in this area, oftentimes the effects are more chronic or long-term. We learned during Deepwater Horizon that inhalation of fumes can cause problems for the lungs and other issues related to ingestion. So the initial impacts may be more chronic in nature. That again is why having a robust marine mammal stranding network is so important. We do have organizations throughout the state that regularly do assessments, collecting animals, do thorough evaluations, and they'll be looking for some of those signs for any animals that might be coming in.
And those signs would be reflected in strandings, that type of thing?
They can be, or through during doing full postmortem exams as well.
Any more questions for Dr. Zaccardi? Yeah, wildlife? Okay. All right, thanks, Doctor. Yes, right there.
This could be easy for Mr. Minister. Is there GPS location that's happening? How current is that pipeline location? And how readily available is it publicly? Where that pipeline sits, and what do we know about the concept behind that 13-foot gap?
So I won't speculate on the reasons for the pipeline movement, but every year we do maintenance, and one year it's internal to the pipe, and the next year it's external to the pipe. So in 2020, we did an ROV scan of the entire pipeline. This is documented and provided to the relevant agencies as to demonstrate if there was any impacts or, potential issues with the pipeline. So that's been fully given to all the regulators, and this latest ROV scan is what demonstrated the difference, the displacement.
Mr. Wiltshire? Yeah. When was the last time your people out there on the rig did a full-scale emergency action drill simulating something similar to what we have here? How often do you do those drills routinely, and are state officials read in on them? So when someone on the rig picks up and says, this is a drill confirming you've received the message, how long has it been since that's been done? Do you do it on a regular basis?
Yes, sir. There are annual spill drills. In fact, last year we did an unannounced spill drill, and the agencies that are involved here next to me are involved in all those spill drills as well. So it is a fully integrated incident response plan that is approved by these relevant agencies.
One drill, that was it?
One per year.
One per year?
Yes, sir.
Has there been a changeover in your personnel there to where some people may not have done that drill?
No, sir. They were all aware, and obviously that incident response plan is right there and available to them at all times.
Then, I'm sorry, this is a follow-up, I'm sorry for this. But given that, you say these people know the drill, know how to perform it, know who to communicate, how do you account for the time lag here?
Sir, as I've mentioned, we discovered oil and water through a line run at 8:09 a.m. Instantly radioed back to the platforms, and the platforms initiated the incident response plan at that time.
Can you say that one last line again?
Like I said, sir, we discovered oil and water at 8:09 a.m. That was communicated back to the platforms, and the platforms initiated the emergency response in this incident response plan.
I have questions for Captain Orr as well as Mr. Wilshire, so if you want to stay up there.
Yes, ma'am.
How can you account for the federal investigators saying that there was an internal alarm? How are we supposed to believe what you say now if they're officially saying there's a 2:30 alarm? And where, on your weekly cleaning, was there anything, when was your last weekly cleaning, and was any abnormality spotted?
No, ma'am, there was no abnormalities to answer that question found. We do cleaning every week. That is to clean up.
What's the date of your last one at that section?
It was literally about a week ago, before the incident.
So the
Last week.
Friday before?
It was middle of last week. So about a week from today.
A week from today. And what about the 2:30 alarm? Why, is PIMSA wrong?
I understand the question, ma'am. We are fully committed to working with the investigators through this, and like I said, all of that will be investigated.
But how can they have that information, but you don't? I'm assuming they're looking at your internal record.
Like I said, we are working with them, giving them all of the transparency and information that we have.
But not the public.
The PHMSA investigation is kind of separate from the response, so I would refer you to a PIO with PHMSA in Washington, D.C. for more information on the investigation side of it, but this is more response-based.
I think my colleague is actually asking a very relevant question, which is, if a low-pressure alarm sounded at 2:30 a.m., and apparently the system was shut down at around 6 a.m., it was only reported at near 9 a.m., what accounts for that time lag? And is that standard operating procedure for your company that you'll wait 3 hours between knowing of a low-pressure alarm, which indicates some sort of leak, and then shutting down the pipeline?
So we have policies and procedures for all of these type of events. We train on them frequently. As I said, there was no lag in communication at 8:09 a.m. We communicated back to the platforms. The first call goes to our incident response commander, which is Whit O'Brien's. Then we started notifying agencies. Whit O'Brien's also notifies agencies as well. So there was no lag in communication from the time that we were aware that oil was on
So
water.
you're saying you first became aware of an oil spill or leak at 8:09 a.m.
Yes, sir.
fully 14 hours after the spill was first sighted by the ship.
We were not aware of a sighting by a ship at 6:09 or whatever at 6 p.m. the night before.
There was a leak and a loss of pressure that happened hours before. What went wrong, sir?
We will fully participate in the investigation. Thank you.
It's a contradiction, sir, when you're saying there was an alarm at 2:30 in the morning.
I did not say there was an alarm at 2:30.
So then where did they get that
You had an
information?
alarm at 2:30. There was an indication of something wrong.
Sir, we will fully participate in the PHMSA investigation that is ongoing.
So you're
And,
admitting we basically have a 6-hour lag here, 2:30 in the morning.
sir, we were not aware of any oil and water at 2:30 a.m.
I'm asking about the oil in the water. The alarm went off, personnel should have at that point done what they were supposed to do. Pick up the phone and alert people. An alarm happened. I don't care what was in the water.
Sir,
Why did
at
they
this
do that?
time, all I can do is, once again, reference the fact that this will be fully investigated.
Mr. Wilshire, so just confirming what you said, did your low pressure alarm sound at 8:09 a.m.? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that we located oil and water at 8:09 a.m.
But then why did you
According
shut
to what
down?
you know, were there any readings that were off until you actually physically sighted oil on the water?
Sir,
In your pipeline?
once again, I will refer back to the PHMSA investigation.
But why did you shut down the pipeline at 6:01 a.m. then?
The pipeline was turned on for 5 minutes from 6 o'clock to 6:05 to do a meter reading. That's it.
And for Captain Orr,
And then it kept going after that until 9? Well, I guess what we're asking is, when did you actually shut down, when did you stop pumping oil?
There was no pumping of oil after 6:05.
Okay, so you knew something was wrong at 6:05 a.m.
Can you come back to the mic, please?
all the time.
All right, can we move on to another question for now? We'll circle back with that.
Captain Orr?
Anybody have any questions about the response efforts underway? Yes.
There have been some concerns raised by the county and local cities about the speed at which they're getting information to local agencies. How is that information communicated to the cities and the county by Unified Command?
That's a good question. We have a liaison officer that reports directly to the staff, and they work to keep all the stakeholders, whether it's elected officials or other dignitaries, in the loop on this. We have daily briefings, 2 a day right now, where we're holding Teams meetings to keep these people in the loop on what's going on.
Captain Orr, please.
Okay. Let's, Erica, one more question.
What about the beaches? So there seems to be a confusion maybe about some sand being open at some locations, some beaches completely closed. Is there some way to clarify what the situation is between Sunset and Sunrise?
Yes, Samantha, can you?
The beaches in the different jurisdictions are open, or they have hard closures or soft closures according to those jurisdictions. So a soft closure refers to the sand being open but the water being closed. A hard closure refers to everything being
Do
closed.
you have a list of which beaches are doing what?
I do. Just a minute. Newport Harbor and Dana Point Harbor are closed. Huntington Beach is a soft closure from Sea Point Street to the Santa Ana River as a soft closure, and a hard closure,
Sea Point to where did you say?
Sea Point to the Santa Ana River.
Okay.
And, yeah. Well, that's interesting. The state beach has a soft closure, is that my understanding? No?
The state beach has a hard closure.
Hard closure,
Only
excuse
the
me.
city beach.
We'll work to get you that information after this.
Yeah,
It's
that would
okay.
be good, because that's kind of confusing for the.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, for the residents, they don't know where to go, and some beaches have signs that are posted, no beach, but yet there's people all over the sand, so. just working on that.
Thanks.
Yeah,
That would be a great idea.
after we're done with the response, the local officials can talk to that.
Okay.
And we're also, we'll get that information in the next press updates that come out. Good question. Okay, yes, right there, Kate-Cal.
Can we please get some information about our local economy? What are our business people telling us? What have they lost?
Do you mind saving that question? Just, we want to give the elected officials and the other local dignitaries a chance to have their own comments and press conference. So we want to get through the response. We want to get these folks back to work. It's been really busy. So if you don't mind just waiting till there will be an opportunity for that after this. All right, a couple more questions. Yeah, over here.
Question for the captain on the response at this point. Another federal agency is saying their estimate is around 700 barrels. The worst case estimate that we've been hearing from the company, the over 3,000 range. Is it, You've been out there, you've been studying this. Do you think it's going to be closer to the other federal agency with PHMSA, with their 700? Are we looking more to 3,200 barrels?
Since we began the response to the spill, we have been using the maximum worst-case discharge amount, which is a worst-case scenario, to mobilize our resources and put the maximum level of effort on the water and on the shore to effect the best response. As we get estimates from other federal entities that have primary authority and jurisdiction over the pipeline and can do those calculations with precision, there will be an opportunity to have a more refined and accurate assessment of what the spill amount is.
Do your people who have been out on the water have thoughts on it, though? Are you leaning one way or the other?
It depends on we're relying on the experts for this that have primary authority and jurisdiction to determine what that amount is, and then to validate that among the federal entities that have also the authority and jurisdiction, so we can provide an accurate number.
But Captain Orr, Mr. Wilshire just said that it's likely to be significantly less than 144,000 gallons. I wonder what that estimate is based off. Can you tell us why it might be significantly less than the maximum?
What I can tell you is that there are precise calculations that go into determining an exact spill amount, and that there are a number of federal entities looking at this number to ensure that we provide an accurate number.
But you have the oil company saying it's significantly less, so I wonder if we could...
You also have Governor Newsom
Explain
said
that.
the same thing yesterday. He said he thinks it's going to come in lower than expected at the pressure he did, after meeting with the Admiral from the Coast Guard.
And when we have an opportunity to validate those numbers with federal experts, we'll commit to a number.
Did the Coast Guard put out the radio broadcast like the Rear Admiral said yesterday and you disputed? Has that been determined whether a broadcast was put out after the initial report from the Good Samaritan?
I completely understand that there are many, many questions about the timeline leading up to this event, and this team here assembled before you is focused on the response to the oil spill, the identification of the recovery of the oil. And as the investigative effort assembles, which is a parallel effort to our team here, I think we'll be able to provide those details. They won't come from this team.
Your Rear Admiral and yourself, you guys promised yesterday you would get us the answer to was a radio broadcast made to the platforms and was it ignored?
And we are working on that, and we will get you that answer.
And have you determined which ship moved the pipe?
Can you repeat the question?
Which ship moved the pipe? There was an anchor attached to a ship presumably that moved the pipe, that's what federal investigators are saying.
Our team is focused on the identification and removal of the oil, and that is going to be a part of the investigation.
But don't you have to know how much oil the ship had on it? Or how big the anchor was?
Again, I'm not involved in the investigative effort, and I would be speculating that the involvement of a ship or an anchor.
Can we get the Rear Admiral who's here to discuss whether or not it was determined whether the radio broadcast went out? He's here again.
Again, part of, as soon as we have that information, we will provide it back to you. Thank you.
Question on some of the responses here. I don't know who would be answering this question. How many personnel do we currently have boots on the ground out there? Is there a pattern or a program for rotating those people to make sure you get fresh personnel on the ground to avoid fatigue, to avoid mishaps, mistakes in handling this stuff? You all want to take a stab at that? Identify yourself again, sir.
Yes, sir. Christian Corvo, Fish and Wildlife, Oscar.
Yeah.
So currently we have over 350 personnel cleaning the beaches on the shorelines. But we're surging all our resources. At this point, we need to get trained people that know how to do this type of work. So we're reaching out across the nation and using our oil spill response organizations for that effort. We're hoping to have 1,500 people on the beaches by the end of the week.
Is that going to be similar to what they do with firefighters? You go 12-hour shifts, 24-hour shifts, one day?
Yeah, the scheduling is up to their contractors, correct? So we're not going to wear these people down. There's going to be shifts and rest periods. So the safety of these responders are of utmost importance to us.
Is it a struggle to get them here, or do you have literally teams around the country chomping at the bit saying, get me in there?
We're reaching out with our contractors to find out who's available. We're starting to surge those resources into our response.
All right, a couple more questions, and then we got to wrap up so we can get these folks back to the command post. Is anybody, Erica, I know you have a question.
On the ground, you've been raising your hand.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed you.
I think it's for Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
You said you followed protocol and had Will O'Brien make spill response calls, but the initial report from Will O'Brien is at 2:30 a.m. How can you explain that?
I'm sorry.
That Will O'Brien made the spill response calls, but the initial report from Will O'Brien listed the incident time at 2:30 a.m. How can you?
I don't know where that information came from, ma'am, but we did not notify Widow Bryan till approximately 8:30 a.m.
All the documentation is proving that what you're saying is not true. How can we believe what
Like I
you're
said,
saying?
ma'am, I don't know what documentation that is that you're referring to, but we did not notify Widow Bryan.
From federal regulators.
Yeah.
It is an initial report from federal regulators. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, can you also just explain a little bit? You say the pipeline was shut off shortly after 6 a.m. Why did you shut off the pipeline at that time if you weren't actually detecting a spill in
The pipeline operations are not consistently running 24 hours a day. So sometimes you run at different times based on, the electricity needs and things like that.
Mr. Worship, is there an automatic cutoff system or an automatic alarm system that should sound when there is a loss of pressure in the pipeline?
We do have a leak detection system, as we've mentioned, and all that information has been provided to the
Was it shut down
authorities.
manually or automatically at 8:09 a.m.?
Sorry, can you just elaborate on what you were saying earlier about the reasons for shutting off a pipeline? You spoke very generally. At that time when you shut it off, what was the reason you shut it off at 6 or 5 a.m.?
We turned it on to do a meter run to calculate volumes of oil
And why did you turn it off at that time?
because it was turned on to do the meter run.
And was it shut off automatically or manually at 8:09 a.m., as you say?
Everything was done in accordance with the incident response plan as soon as, like I said, the pump was not on at 8:09 a.m., but all the platforms and everything else was shut down immediately thereafter as well.
Was the personnel who actively shut it down, or was it an automatic shutdown? That's what I'm correct.
No, sir, it was not an automatic shutdown. It was a manual shutdown.
Were there personnel staffing the platform overnight Friday into Saturday? And how many?
You have 24-hour operations on the platforms. There's always people on staff.
Do these pipelines have automatic shut-off technology, or is it all?
They do for certain pressure events, yes.
Estimate how much oil?
Sorry, just over here.
The control center is on Ellie or is in Long Beach?
The control center is on Ellie.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, one more question over here, and then we gotta wrap up.
Since the argument is about when you shut it off, can you estimate how much oil was coming out hour per hour?
We have provided our estimates to the regulators. As Captain Orr said, these are all going to be vetted and released as soon as everyone is comfortable with the
Can you
estimates.
give me an idea of what that is, though, with like how much it would be?
At this time, I'm not going to give a precise estimate, but we have provided all of our data and our calculations to the federal investigators.
All right, Erica, then we gotta wrap up.
Yeah, one question actually for Mr. Wilshire, and then
Okay.
just one very, very quick follow-up after that. As far as the boat, the ship goes that may have struck the pipe, do you have an information of the ships that were in port and at the location at that time that you can kind of narrow that whole thing down, or?
Ma'am, we will have absolutely nothing to do with the investigation of any potential ship that may have impacted the pipeline. That will obviously be handled by federal investigators.
All right, thanks so much. We appreciate you coming out, and we'll keep you up to date on the next press conference. SoCalSpillResponse.com is the incident website, and the latest wildlife numbers at owcn.org. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Can I get my question answered now from local officials about the impact on our economy?
Yes,
Any of the
yes,
local
that's
officials are
my bad. I was going to introduce them. So right now we're going to open it up for the local officials and representatives to. I know we have Dave Min, the state senator that represents this region. So we'll allow that to happen now, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Okay, I have.
Thank you. My name is Dave Min. I do represent this area from Huntington Beach down to Laguna Beach. And I guess I just first start off by thanking Governor Newsom, who came down yesterday and assembled a group of us. We had a very productive conversation. From my perspective, the investigation is